So, hello everyone. We are officially starting session 1 of this event, and my name is Miguel Azanha from the University of Minho in Portugal, and I'm really glad to be the chair of this session. I will start the session by welcoming everyone, of course, as I just did, and to remind you with this, at least AirMeet is new for me, and it's probably new for many of you. So you have on the right-hand side of your screen, you will have a questions icon, and you just click there and just throw your questions as you have them within the presentations, and I will try to manage these questions with the presenters. Also, in the meantime, we did not have the presence here of the first speaker, Eilif Jeltset. So as he's not here, we will immediately go to the second presenter, who is Leonard Sanger. So Leonard, thank you very much for submitting your work, Development of an Implementation Strategy for Municipalities to Enhance Computerized Building Permits. And we're looking forward to see your presentation. Thank you, Leonard. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Miguel. Thanks for the introduction. I will try to share my screen. So, do you see?
I confirm. Thank you.
Nice. Okay. Just have to see where I can move the slides. It's right here. Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Leonard Sanger. I'm a research assistant at the Leibniz-Universität Hannover in the heart of Germany, and I'm working at the Institute of Construction Management and Digital Engineering. And one of our main tasks is working with digital buildings, so far mainly used in the planning phase and also in operations phase, both for buildings and infrastructure. And since there's only few activities in Lower Saxony so far in terms of building permits, we started to approach this topic some short 2 years ago. So as I already mentioned, it's roughly used in the granting area and official assessment. There have been some activities in Germany that focus on modeling and process linking, yet not on a holistic strategic approach, and to guide municipalities towards the goal to have digital building permit approval in use. And besides the building area, we have a master plan digitalization in Lower Saxony, and we have the state law concerning digitalization and information security. This is on the state level, and on the federal level, we have the Onlinezugangsgesetz, which is a federal law that asks all communities and states to digitize about 600 administrative services due to the end of 2022. So it's a really challenging task. And what also is the status quo that we know that in other countries, communities and also technical wise, there's more advanced. About the organizational structure, we are a federal republic, and then we have 16 states and regional supervisions. And for example, if you look at our state, our reference area to examine for the scientific project, we have over 100 lower supervisions in the state of Lower Saxony, which need to be digitalized, and they all can act on their own. They can make their own decision what software to buy, how to train their employees and their staff, and how to empower them. And also I would like to add that the higher supervision yet is not the federal state, but the state ministry, on the state level. And what you also see is we have 16 building codes. For example, it's called the NBAO in Niedersachsen. They're all different, and they were derived from the called Musterbauordnung, template for building code issued by the federal state. yet this is not really binding. So whenever you execute your building permission, you have to follow the state code, and besides that, of course, in the regional areas, regional regulations, which can be zoning plans, etc. So from past present, where everything is dealt analog with papers and written forms and 2D blueprints, we try to move to the near future using digital documents, digital signatures, partly intelligent documents, using building portals that have already been implemented, and in the remote future the goal is to have it fully digital, model-based, object-oriented, you could also say BIM-based, and mostly paperless. So that is kind of the status quo, or has been the status quo. And yeah, well, to foster this objective, we had set up a research project to execute this with 2 universities. We have the relevant ministries on board, the building ministry, the economic ministry, who is financing this and also is in charge or responsible for the master plan digitalization in the state of Lower Saxony. And of course we have the Ministry for Inner Affairs, who is in our state responsible for providing data, geodata, catastrophe data, etc. And how did we proceed, or how do we proceed methodologically? Well, first of all, we had a rough project development which was derived from our BIM cluster. So like 2 years ago, we had set up a BIM cluster with a lot of public entities in the state that have relevance or connection to construction and building and architecture. And so we derived a task force to roughly shape this project, and then within the project with the 9 municipalities, we had a workshop phase where we did like basic training about building information modeling and tools, and show them model checking, rule checking in our labs using software. And also we used this to have a rough shaping about major questions, major concerns and fields of activity. What we did then in phase 3 is we had a very detailed semi-structured survey phase with experts from the 9 pilot municipalities to identify the key fields and to also identify major barriers, and to have a broader validation within the state. We had as a follow-up a closed survey that was spread statewide to get more input from other municipalities. As I mentioned, there's over 100 statewide. And what is ongoing right now is to specify these fields of activity and to underline them with the partners and also other stakeholders, so not only project partners. So we're talking about professional associations, architects, civil engineers, other building departments, other federal state departments that are included in this process, ministries, etc. And coming back to the beginning, trying to develop a strategy for the state, but not maybe only for the state, but also to have it in use or to benefit from it in other states. Of course, once we have found a strategy and have a harmonization within the state, then the next step is how to harmonize this with other states. So we have 16 states, as mentioned. What we did in the project also is, of course, we looked at model processes using BPMN. And main target is, of course, to parallelize activities, to have simultaneous and at all time access for all the users, and not only thinking in the box for the users right now as a status quo within one department, but also or within one building department, but also, for example, for external partners. And we want to increase the efficiency. We want to higher the work quality by assistance for the public officers working, checking, and granting. And also we want to have a higher transparency in the process. That's always a big topic for us. So what is also mentionable for Germany? Well, of course, already have talked about providing data. We want to see that the data provision is a clear process by public domain, for example, in this case, from the Ministry of Inner Affairs, and the use and integration should only happen once, following the once-only principle. We have to have a better efficiency and to have a good data consistency. What we also have in Germany, talking about BIM and open formats, we have a specificity, and that's we have two formats. It's called X-Bau and X-Planung, and one of them is for information exchange and collaboration with the people who are asking for permission and with the authorities, and the other one is in terms of providing data from regional planning and also from existing stock, which is obviously needed if you're building, rebuilding, new building. So, I just need a sip of water. What was one of our key findings? We have an asymmetric distribution in knowledge, technology, and implementation. So some have very pure knowledge about digital tools. They have roughly seen a digital model. Other one says, yeah, okay, we already have worked on this. We have started to implement, for example, X-Planung. In little ways, X-Bau is not very usable. Some say we are very eager to follow this goal to end of 2023. Others say no way. Our community is not gonna have a fully digital workflow within the next 5 years. What we also had in mind when we started is, okay, we're bringing different models, building models, reference models, terrain models, stock models. We merge them together. We do a prototyping. We take the communities and say, okay, we have a workshop on model checking, and then we run through prototype projects with some of you. Well, the first response of most of the community was, okay, take it easy, take it slowly. That's a little bit two steps away from us. It's the second next step and not the next. We would like to see a strategy, what fields of action we have to improve, we have to develop, and then following, we are eager to do this. And also, I would like to mention that there is some other national projects, for example, mentioned already in the beginning, in the city of Hamburg or in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. They have already developed a model setup plan for building models and how to connect them with terrain models. And of course, since there is a lot of similarities due to our structure, our opinion is, okay, let's take this knowledge and integrate it and not redevelop it just because we need a lower Saxon project or pilot model. So what did we develop, or what are we developing to have comparability and to give identification for each municipality? What state are we? We have developed a stage model with 3 major categories. Of course, you can see from very poor use of digital methods to say paperless, fully digital. And so you can see in what area am I, and what next step do I have to do to achieve these next stages. And the major categories are underlined with the major use cases that have been identified in this in the survey. And of course, they can also underline subtasks, but I think on a strategic approach in the first level, you shouldn't be too specific in order to get them all aboard. What gives opportunities does this give for us? We have the comparability for the municipalities. They can also see, okay, there's other municipalities that have maybe are on the same stage. They might use the same building portal, or they might use in perspective the same model checking tools. So let's, for example, let's neither have a rank growth throughout the whole state on the one side, and on the other side don't have a singularity. Everybody's just using one portal and everybody has to merge into this process model and rebuy all the applications, because when we're talking about municipalities, financing is a big question. So they want to know what do we have to do in the next 2 to 5 years to enforce the use of digitization in this process. Didn't we already have purchased like a building portal to communicate? Do we already have this software, that software, etc.? And of course, this is in alignment with the portal strategy of Germany and also the EU. coming already closely to the end. So we're of course not only talking in this project about theory and strategy only, but as mentioned earlier, we are also have prepared various models to use them as pilots and also to use them as training models for the public officers within our project. Yet due to Corona, we had to shut this down, at least on terms of getting them the first training and getting them having implemented their first use cases. So there we have a little delay. So what we did in this field is with the Ministry of Inner Affairs, we gathered all data, cadastre data, regional planning data, the city models, and then we merged them together with building models. And in the next step, of course, we started to set up rule checking in various model checking tools with advantages and disadvantages to have comparability, to see what are the strengths and the strong sides and the weak sides of either application, and to show them how this is executed. On the target is, of course, to have a complete list on every parameters that need to be integrated in the model and that need to be checked in the model checking software, which is right now quite a challenge because the municipalities are struggling a little bit to give feedback and to really say, okay, we have a complete list about all parameters that need to be checked, even in the conventional way. So that's also quite interesting. Last chart for me, and then I'm done. So here you can see the different fields of activity that have been identified, and also with the responsibilities, like who is a major stakeholder and who can or has to take major actions. For example, in legislation term, of course, you see the state who is responsible for building codes, but you see also the federal government talking about the standard formats that they have been implemented. And we are also looking on other fields, additional benefits, because municipalities, they do not only grant permission, but they are also planning or distribute planning for their own buildings, and they are also operating their own buildings. So we also want to show the use of BIM models in the whole life cycle. And of course, we want to see and show what the people in authorities and what is their role in a new digital environment, how this is embedded in the overall strategy in state and federal level. And of course, we want to show best practices for the states to implement. So sorry, I did use some more minutes. Now I'm done. Thank you for your attention, and if you have some questions, I'm happy to answer right now, or maybe in the follow-up.
Okay, thank you very much, Leonard. A very, very interesting presentation and a very complete approach, in the sense that you are looking from the strategic beginnings of the issue and the personal and the very political things you have to address, up to the technical ones. So it's a great inspirational work. We can start with questions, and I'm really glad that Giada has opened the floor with a question. And she asks, how did you select the 9 municipalities to be involved in the project? What was their degree of willingness, and how was this pushed from the ministry, for example? Were there requirements you see in the writing, I believe? Yeah.
Yes, good question. Thanks, Giada. I know this is also a very interesting topic for you. What we did is we had an openness to have everybody involved, so we didn't have any restrictions in the first place. For example, we only accept municipalities that have already reached a certain degree. So in the very beginning, we widespreadly invited everybody in the state, all 102 municipalities. And we were strongly supported by the building ministry, and they also approached the municipalities. And then we started inviting. Or like, for example, we had, I think in the very first beginning, we had, of course, everybody was interested, and now see, and then one said, okay, we're not jumping in right away. We want to see what are the outcomes. So when we started, we had we had 7/8 communities from the very first day, and later on during the project last summer, we even had another community jumped in. So what we can say is this also shows this variety of experience codes or experience levels and technological levels. We have communities, so to say, they don't have any digital tools, like they don't have a building platform, you can hand in intelligent PDFs, no digital signatures, and they mostly communicate by mail, email sometimes, but even paper mail. So yeah, we did this totally open, and we had various communities with various levels of experience joining the project.
Okay, thank you. Very clear answer. I would point one of my questions, because we only have time for one more, and then we go on because Eilif has showed up. My question would be on the harmonization of norms that they already have. So in my country, it's the same. Every municipality has their own rules, and even designers have to approach the respect for different rules, even if they are 20 kilometers apart buildings. Yes. And then there's a big challenge in putting these municipalities abandoning their history of rules and trying to settle what are the best rules that maybe is from the neighboring municipality. Do you have any specific examples on these obstacles and how you are trying to overcome them?
Well, it's a very good question. It's a very interesting topic, and it's they are struggling. What our situation is, they don't even have these specific rules like written down in a structured way. I think the first level, the first way is to identify the like, for example, the type of parameter or information. Is it geometrical? Is it semantic? Is it something else? Can we have a comparable level for them, or like can we have the same language in the first place, and then we starting like to harmonize the language, and then we start to harmonize the way how the information is given or is integrated, for example, into a building model. I would to finish this, I would bring it to an upper level, Miguel. I was talking about the 16 building codes earlier for states. Mm-hmm. What is ongoing right now, and this is one of the projects that is running while we are working, is right now the 16 state ministry are sitting together. It's a project supervised by the University of Bochum, which is also in this cluster, and it's called MBO, Musterbauordnung, the building codes, state building codes to BIM. And what they are doing right now on this level is to find the same language and to find the same parameters and to harmonize them. And I think once it is executed in an example on this level, I think it's good then to break it down on the lower levels, because the lower levels depend on the Musterbauordnung, Landesbauordnung, etc. Okay, thank you.
So yes, we would close now your presentation because we really need to go with the schedule. And Eilif, can I just have confirmation from you that you have your audio well configured, camera, and yeah?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear, but on a very low level. If you can. Now it's perfect.
Okay. I am bit because you have some small trouble. Can I foresee present in some minutes? Is that okay? Or
yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect. So we move for the next presentation, which is
because can I be the last one? So that is good because I had some small troubles. Sorry for that.
Yes. Okay, no problem. Thank you very much. So we move to the last presentation, and then we will come for this first one. So it will be presented by Giada Malacara from Fraunhofer, Italy, and it's about digital building permit maturity model towards a GeoBIM integration. So I have to ask Leonard to stop sharing screen so that I can start sharing her own. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So yeah, thank you. Thank you, Miguel. Okay, just oh, sorry. Okay, here I am. Working. So thank you very much. I'm here to present the follow-up activity of the European Network, one of the follow-up activities of the European Network for Digital Building Permit. And these activities is related with the development of a digital building permit maturity model. In particular, today I will present also the relation with the BIM and the geo aspect, since Francesca and I were working on this model, and we come from these two different domains. As you already, Francesca told you in the welcome session, this is an activity into the context of the European Network for Digital Building Permit. And actually, the first activity we had was the development of our vision. So we set our ambitions and requirements, as I explained before. And once we have defined the network vision for this automated and digital building permit process, now it's time to move to define how to monitor the progress towards such an ambition. That, of course, this progress should be measurable, according to a digital building permit maturity model. So the aim of the maturity model is to support municipalities and other public administration in assessing their level of maturity, and based on that, in further developing an appropriate roadmap towards a fully digital building permit. So the scope of this presentation today is to introduce the first development towards this digital building permit maturity model. The maturity model that today I will present you is based mainly on the experience gained by me and by Francesca, but of course we are looking for collecting also your feedbacks and also your experiences, if it can help in improving this maturity model. And of course, the aim of today and also tomorrow is to validate this first developing, collecting your feedbacks and identifying improvements for future development. The reference to our maturity model is the BIM Maturity Model Matrix developed by Succar. And the BIM Maturity Model of Succar is characterized by 4 components, which are listed in this slide. So the field of action, which are policy, process field, and technology field, which are the BIM field of actions. Within this field of action, we have specific competency areas. For example, for the technology field, we have software, hardware, and network. And then we have the capability stages from a pre-BIM to a post-BIM improvement, passing through an object-based modeling capability stage, model-based collaboration, and network-based integration. And into each of these capability stages, we have 5 maturity levels. So in order to map, to assess also the level of maturity of each capability stage. So if we are in an initial phase into the object-based modeling capability stage, or maybe we are into a managed level into a model-based collaboration. However, just to give you a more practical overview on this maturity model, maybe some of you you already know this matrix, but some of you maybe not. So I will present. I'm putting an example here. So we have, for example, this is the matrix of the technology field of action. For the technology field of action, we have these 3 competency areas, so software, hardware, and network. and an explanation for each of the maturity levels of what software, hardware, and network means in this progression. And of course, this part of the matrix correspond to a specific capability stage, for example, object-based modeling. So which software, hardware, network we need to be into this capability stage, and based on our software, hardware, network competency, we are in a different maturity level of that capability stage. So we try to develop our maturity model matrix based on these concepts, and the fields of action from Succar become our pillars. So the European Network for Digital Building Permit pillars, so process, technology, rules and requirements. The competency areas are for us the requirement that we need in order to achieve that ambition. So for each of the pillars, we have set a list of requirements that for us are our competency areas. The capability stages, we consider our matrix already as part of one of the capability stages of Succar, which means the post-BIM capability stage. And within our capability stage, we have defined the same maturity levels, so initial, defined, managed, integrated, and optimized. So this is more or less, this is the structure of our digital building permit maturity matrix. And of course, we need to fulfill this matrix with contents. So what does it mean? Create, initial, define, manage, integrated, and optimize for each of these requirements. Well, the contents of our maturity matrix comes from the experiences gained into these two projects. So the GeoBIM for building permit in Rotterdam that explored the building permit use case in close collaboration with the municipality of Rotterdam. And by my side, and that was the competency and the experience gained by Francesca. And from my side, we put there the experience gained within the GeoBIM project and another past project in close collaboration with the association of the municipalities in the region where I work. So we came out with this matrix that, of course, it's a starting point. So it's very important to understand if it fits, for example, also your experiences. If you think that something is missing, if you think that maybe something should be improved. If you click or if you picture this QR code, you can read through the entire maturity matrix. At the end of my presentation, I will also share into the chat the link to the maturity matrix. The link will be available till tomorrow evening. And it's this link is helpful for you to go through the matrix, read it, and be ready when we will get the interactive sections, because one of the scope of this presentation is to validate this maturity model. So we want to discuss this maturity model with you, and you can provide feedbacks on it, and we will discuss about this maturity model at the end of each pillar sections of the workshop. So today, at the end of the day, we will have the interactive session about the maturity model, about process, and tomorrow in the morning we will have these two interactive sessions about rules and requirements and technology. For each interactive session, so for each pillar of our network and of the maturity matrix, we will discuss about the relevance, the accuracy, and the clarity of each part of the model. With relevance, we means whether each part of the model is perceived to fulfill the intended purpose. So if it's useful to understand the assessment of a municipality process towards a simple and simplification and towards the efficiency of the process. For example, if the technology part of the model is, for example, relevant to assess the current level of technology within a municipality in relation to a system that will be completely interoperable. And the accuracy means the evaluation of whether each part of the model is perceived to be representative of the concept that it claimed to represent. So, for example, if for each, I can show you, for each requisite, for example, we have a correct definition of each stage of each requisite, for example, and of course the clarity. If it's clear what it's written, if some parts are ambiguous, maybe, so how to improve also the clarity of the maturity model. Each interactive session will last 20 minutes. We will have a first part where I will provide the introduction, then we'll have the interaction part and the discussion. We will use Mentimeter to support the interaction and discussion, and the results of this activity will be presented tomorrow at the closing remarks session. So that's all from my side. So if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Giada. So it was very clear, and in fact, there will be even more interaction possibilities. So here the questions may even be extended to another forum. In any case, I just want to bring one information regarding one of the questions that was asked before, is about the sharing of all the presentations, and even the videos themselves, they will be shared. So everyone can rest, relax, that they can re-see these presentations again. So this is really good. And then as far as questions are related here in this session, we didn't receive any questions yet. So I'll exert my job of making one question, but we also are not that relaxed on time. So one question would be limited for now. And it's a little bit about the methodology. So after you have this maturity matrix ready, what are the methods that you are planning to introduce it to be answered? Is it a self-assessment? Is it an online form? Is it based on interview? Is it by a specialist? Is it by the person, regardless of their maturity? This you have thought a bit of this for sure. Probably, can you elaborate a little bit on it?
Yes, the target of these maturity models are municipalities. So we want this. The first scope of the maturity model is to evaluate the maturity level of an organization, because a municipality is an organization, and the idea is to assess their level using a questionnaire, so very quantitative, let's say, so putting them into questions and see how they are settled into these metrics. And then, of course, it's not enough to set a detailed assessment, and we will develop also for sure a sort of also procedure about how to help interviews after the assessment, for example. This is very useful, I think.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, for everyone, the link is already on the chat. So Giada already put the link on the chat. So I encourage everyone to look at it and to be present in the session for discussion of this. I think it will be very interesting. So for the sake of keeping time, I'm the pleasure killer. I will just continue for the next presentation. Giada, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. And for the next presentation, Eilif, are you ready now? So let's just stand by a little bit more, I'll just make the formal presentation. It's Eilif Hjeltset, and is from NTNU in Norway, and is here to present the need for an integrating approach for developing digital building permit solutions. So it would be, yeah, you're already sharing the screen, which is a great step, and you just have to unmute yourself, please.
Muted.
Yeah.
No, I hope
now.
you can
Yeah.
hear me.
Yeah.
I do not think that I'm on the camera, but anyhow, thank you for being able to have this presentation, and I have some small troubles ahead, so I had to redo some of my thing. So I go straight to it, run through my presentation here. I'm sitting here in a 3-screen environment, so that's the reason. First of all, some of the challenges I'm going to do is based also my experience working previously at Norwegian Building Authority, and now also working as a professor in digitalization at NTNU. And this presentation is developed together with Bendy Lee from Aalborg University. I run through it because what is the challenge by getting it digital? Because it has been discussed so long. But there is a challenge, and I do not think we are aware of the digital possibilities. This is taken from a standard, and you see that you come up with colors. However, this is new. It also that you have to think in a different way when you are trying to make something digital. And here you have, what you see in Norwegian Standard Norge. It's easy to read. You can also take it in English. Very easy to understand. If you have Arabian, you read it a different way. And also, when you are Japanese, you read it this way. So just understanding regulations, then you need to have a new type of language, and I call it rulish. And I do think that's a challenge, one of the hidden challenges, because we are, as human professionals, used to interpret the regulations in a very traditional way, reading it, understanding it, and having a lot of background information. However, when you are going to make it digital, it works differently. And one example also, because you need also to be very specific on the terms you are using. And you see also some hidden elements here about level and floor. So we're going into this interpretation case, because that is, from my point of view, one of the largest challenges. We also need to work interdisciplinary to make it into something that's applicable to do, because it is both to do the compromises and the interpretation, and also the practical understanding. So from my point of view, the lack of multidisciplinarity is also one of the hidden elements. If you're going into one of the disciplines like the legal, the discussions always end that this is very, very difficult. If it's informatics, they can do everything, but it doesn't help you, because you also have to have the construction side, the practical side. What is the purpose with it? And that also implies that you can have a more pragmatic thinking. You can also learn from other countries, but they have their own constraints. And I did a survey some years ago comparing Norway and Singapore, both leading in digitalization. We could learn, but also a bit hard to transfer the solution directly. What you can transform is the way of understanding. And here I also focused on the processes, the people, and also the technology. So it's more about getting understanding and how to do it. Then we have the challenge with understanding regulations, and I do think that what is being mostly presented is the prescriptive regulation. As a wheelchair, a turning circle should be 1.50 meters, or a door 900 millimeter. However, the direction goes into focus on more performance based, and there you also have to go into the understanding and the purpose with the regulation. To do that, it's very easy when you want to digital something to be aware. I'm sorry, this is not translated yet. To be aware of what can be transferred, translated, or transformed, and we go into that in detail. And also see that you need a digital support to get it interpreted. Here with the RACE methodology developed by Nick Nisbet and me together. So I'm going into an approach for understanding it, and then I introduce what is called test indicator objective, a way to interpret something, to get a joint practical understanding, where you look at the goal and you look at the criteria and you interpret it in a way that it can be transferred. That means that if you are taking some of the regulation and try to implement it in a digital system, you run up with, yes, it's only a limited part that can be transferred. Here with a standard, where I see that, I'll see 43% has to be done manual. And then the question is, yes, that's good that we can do 57% digital. However, when you almost has to do half of it manual, it doesn't help you too much. If you can get it reduced to only 17%, then it's helpful. And the way to do it is that I did a study where I gone into the regulations and interpret it in a way at what can be transferred and what has to be interpreted. That means then I also did the same thing. I'm coming back to it. Sorry that I'm a bit fast on it. The same thing also foresee on some standards. And then you should maybe think that the newest standard was foresee applicable for being digitalized. Here is the foundation for how to foresee look into if a regulation or a requirement can be transformed into a rule. Is just that, can it be calculated, or is it very clear what you are talking about as this calculation? Okay, that is very clear. Then you have to foresee transform about, because there is possible to get a joint understanding. And of course, then you have something that has to be done manual because it's quantifying direct and indirect, and you see those requirements is very, very blurry. The thing was that I discovered, maybe I should take it, because I read through the standard piece by piece and classified which part could be done automatic or semi-automatic by some type of interpretation, and what has to be done completely manual. And that leads into the result that we saw, that it's not about the age, but it's how the regulation is designed. Do they give some support for interpretation? And here we see it that the ISO standard 15686 gave it, and this is because it was written to in a way that it should be processed more or less digital. I give two comments. I go back to this standard about accessibility, and why I'm going back to this is that they gave up a real important element, because they said that human being is the purpose of everything. That means that when you are going to decide if something is too high, then you can see on, is this reachable from a person in a wheelchair, and so on. So we gave some way of interpreting it. And I do think that is the thing that you have to be aware of. because if you are not aware of that, you will run into problems when trying to digitalize regulations. And there you also have to be aware of what I do think is the most important. What is the fact complexity? So how do you interpret the terms, the requirements? Are they clear? Or can they be discussed? And then you have to do some type of support to get it more understandable. The other thing is, of course, rule complexity. If there's a large number of rules and they are not consistent, then you run into troubles. So being aware of that, I do think very, very important to start a process. And this is the overview of it that I have put up. And you see now that you can then, of course, something is very clear to define. You can just go ahead and specify it very easily. Some tasks you can see that this has to be done manual. It's requiring so much resources, and even if you try to include machine learning, I do think it will be a challenge to get some support. However, if you look at some of those elements where you see that the process is clear or the fact is clear, a bit clear, then you can design processes that use a combination of professional skills and computational power to actually develop semi-automatic or semi-manual systems. So I do think this can be an approach, a pragmatic approach, because too much has been discussed that this has to be automatic, and then you often run into troubles about, interpreting some of the terms that you have some input, or that you have to include a lot of other regulation to make it work. So by doing this, you can develop a framework where you see how much can be done, and we agree about the degree of automation in advance, because then you have a system where you can develop supporting procedures to make it be applicable and to be a help both for the person or the organization that is applying for a building permit, but also for the building authorities. I said, yes, we know that this is done by the computer system. We know the input requirements and so on, how it is processed. And then we can have focus on what we has to look into. So this was a framework to get a more predictable process. And I do think that when I'm going back to this hidden challenges is that we too often run into do something and try to do it automatic, while that is not applicable at all. Be aware of that, be pragmatic in a way, and then I do think that the development of digital solution will increase, because from my point of view, I do think that development has been very, very slow the last year. Bit critical, because we had digital systems in example, Norway and Singapore many years ago, but they haven't been so much further developed. There is some elements on some small cases, but I lack the real effort to start to really digitalize regulation requirements in a larger scale. And that's why I do think that we need to be aware of what can be digitalized, in a way that it is supporting our work, and what has to be done manually. And when you're doing that in advance, I do think that you get a more predictable process. And by this, you can have a product that is not going into a failure by default because the requirement is not there. So that was my message on here. And sorry for having a very rough presentation. I had some accident with my presentation. I had to redo a part of it. I will update it so you get a complete English version. So thank you for your attention, and open for questions or whatever.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Hailif. We have some time for questions, even though we are officially delayed in regard to the program, but we must always have some time for questioning. So you just delivered a slightly different presentation from planned, so maybe you switch your two presentations, but this is not an issue. It's been very interesting, so that there's no issues there. So there's a question already in the group by Giada. Have you already published this study? Could you share the publication in any way?
Some of it I have published, but I see that the focus on digitalization of regulation has increased. So I will foresee give priority to do it and do some publication. But in the abstract, there is also a list of published papers that I've collected for. So mostly is done, but I do think it's needed to have a new or fresh approach.
Okay. Thank you. So I also have another question on my own, which is regarding the way you presented. You focus totally on the analysis of existing regulations. And many people are pointing in the direction of not digitizing existing regulations, but figure out how should be the new regulations so that they are more relatable to the digitization process. Is this fact to you something you disagree, or you just presented the analysis as a starting point also to figure out how the future should be, the future regulations?
I fully understand, foresee that also, of course, as I presented with one of those standards that was foresee designed for the digitalization. You see that the degree of requirements that could be digitalized was increasing significantly. So the answer on that is a clear yes. We should be aware that the input is clear, the terms are clear, and also foresee which other regulation interfere with this. However, this is then you're opening for a I do think it's more about the mentality that you are aware of it and you don't use new terms, because I see already there that we are making troubles for digitalization. For some reason, we change terms a bit to make it, for some reasons. So it's a hard way to develop new regulation if you not have the right mindset and the support for it. But you can test it in advance, and that is my point. Test the requirements if they are applicable for digitalization in some way, direct or indirect. Yes.
Okay. So thank you. I must confess I would still even have other questions on my own, but I will shut up myself because we need to continue with the program. I would like to thank you for your very clear presentation and answers, and thank all the speakers for this incredibly interesting session. So with that being said, and to avoid any further delays with the program, we are now closing this session, which is roughly speaking 5 minutes late. So our coffee break becomes a little bit shorter, but we will keep schedule. Okay. So I would like to thank everyone for your speeches and for the questions that were raised. Thank you. Okay. Closing the session now. Thank you.